Gabe, I'd like to turn to our second segment for tonight. And, you were just mentioning Kyle Monangai and all the contributions that he made to Rutgers football, the university, and hopefully now in the NFL. Well, that brings us to the topic of the running backs for 2025. Now that we've lost Monangai, we got three running backs contending for the starting position. C.J. Campbell, a transfer from Florida International University, and returning players Antoine Raymond and Jashawn Benjamin. So those are the top three in the running back room. And I'd like to start this discussion off with just a general question for you. How do you see the running back room playing out, and who's going to get the playing time, and how good are we going to be?
Yeah, it's interesting because our lads, which has every depth chart in college football, actually has CJ Campbell starting over Antoine Raymond. But all of the fans really think this is going to be a breakout year for Raymond. And I can see it happening. I think he was almost Monangai-esque last year when he was playing. So I really think it's a two-man race for the running back one position. But they're deep enough, especially because they have Samuel Brown, the fifth, too. And then, like you said, Jashawn Benjamin, to where they could play a 3 RB set, sort of like the Buccaneers did last year because they weren't expecting the surging performances of Bucky Irving. And then they had awkward situations elsewhere. Well, if you're Jashawn Benjamin and you're Samuel Brown, you're saying, how do I make this an awkward situation? How do I get myself to be good when my peers are not being good? And obviously you root for a team success, but the answer to that is if one of these guys gets injured, Jashawn Benjamin especially can be plugged in and kind of play sort of Raymond-esque. So it gets passed down from Monangai-esque to Raymond-esque, and now Jashawn Benjamin could definitely be thrown into the rotation. But as of now, and that's with respect to Samuel Brown, because he's been here 3 years onto his fourth year, never transferred despite low snap counts, so respect to you. But with as of now, it's really a two-man race when healthy.
All right, well, that's a great analysis. So I want to just dive a little deeper here and look at some of the statistics here from these three running backs. So we start out with C.J. Campbell, Florida International University transfer. 2024, 165 carries for 844 yards, 11 touchdowns, and a 5.1 yards per carry average. Let's look at some of the highlights from the season. Against Tulsa, 15 carries for 100 yards, 6.7 average, with a long of 58 yards. Against a stingy South Florida defense, 12 carries, 90 yards for a 7.5 average with 2 touchdowns and a long of 30. And against a weaker Charlotte team, 21 carries, 150 yards for a 7.1 average, a touchdown, and a long of 58. Now let's look at Raymond. Raymond didn't have the same amount of carries or playing time, but he was still impressive with 100 carries, 457 yards, 8 touchdowns, and a 4.6 average. And 2 games from Antoine Raymond really stand out. Kansas State, 18 carries, 113 yards in the Rate Bowl, 6.3 average, 3 touchdowns, a long of 65.
Woo!
Michigan State, where Adam Shaw is going. And Adam, I don't want to hear from you again. I'm not saying you're the one who brought it up. But anyway, let's digress. Michigan State, Antoine Raymond, 9 carries, 71 yards, 7.9 yards per carry average, and 2 touchdowns. That's nothing to sneeze at. And you brought up Jashawn Benjamin. Let's talk about Jashawn Benjamin. Still lesser carries, but still impressive potential. 19 carries, 100 yards last season with 1 touchdown and a 5.3 yards per carry average. In the Rate Bowl against Kansas State, 7 carries for 33 yards and a 4.7 average per carry with 1 touchdown. And Minnesota against P.J. Fleck and the Minnesota Golden Gophers, 11 carries, 66 yards for 6.0 yards per carry average. So I'm not so sure who's going to start because all 3 of these running backs have shown potential for greatness.
Yeah.
So, Gabe, how do you think Shannon's going to make this decision, and who do you think we're going to see out there starting the first game?
How I honestly view it is it's going to be a 2 running back set. I don't know. I mean, on paper, maybe CJ will be the starter or Raymond will be the starter. but between both of them, it's going to be very 50-50 based on the situation. Just some examples off the top of my head: Sean Green, LaDainian Tomlinson, Ahmad Bradshaw, Brandon Jacobs, that kind of thing. Where Raymond, if you look at his passing or his receiving statistics, he only had 3 catches for 44 yards versus CJ Campbell had 40 receptions for 466 yards and 3 touchdowns. And also another impressive statistic with Campbell is in 165 attempts, he did not have a single fumble. So my take is Raymond's going to be the power back. He's going to be the 1st and 10 guy if it's early in the game or you're up. He's going to be the 3rd and 3 guy if you know you have 2 possessions to play with. He's going to for sure be the 4th and 1 guy. But CJ is going to be the finesse guy, the 3rd down running back, the check down option. So it really comes down to scheming and situation. I think they're going to play both of them. If I had to guess between CJ and Raymond, which one would technically be the starter, I guess I'd say CJ because he does a little more for the offense. But I think it's going to be as damn close to 50-50 as it can get.
Okay, that's a great point. One of the questions I have, maybe you can help me with this, is can any of these running backs catch passes out of the backfield? Because when I think of them, I don't think of them just running the ball, but can we have them, be good receivers and, add to what should be a dynamic offense? Do any of the 3, kind of jump out to you as being potentially good receivers out of the backfield?
Yeah, absolutely. So I said CJ, right? He had 40 receptions last year, 466 yards. So that's not just catching it out of the backfield. That's running routes because he had 11.5 or 11.7 yards per reception and 3 touchdowns. So he can run routes if needed. And, Raymond, like I said, 3 catches in 10 games when you have 100 attempts rushing is not good. So he's not going to be getting the ball in terms of via the throw from Callie McManus. When you look at Benjamin, it's interesting because he only has 7 catches in his collegiate career in 13 games, but he also only has 64 rushing attempts. So you can almost say the sample size isn't big enough for him, but the fact that he's getting some catches is good. But Samuel Brown, he only has 7 in his career, and he has 189 attempts, so he is not going to be getting. Samuel Brown and Raymond are going to be purely rushing and blocking. Benjamin maybe here and there, but CJ Campbell he reminds me of Darren Sproles. I mean, that's really how I see him, as sort of being the Darren Sproles of this offense. And then Raymond sort of being the Jay Ajayi, that kind of guy.
Great analogies. I like it. Another Sproles. Sproles was from Kansas State, correct?
I believe so.
Very dynamic running back.
Yeah, I mean, he was part of some great backfields. Him and McCoy, him and Ajayi, him and Reggie Bush, who thankfully got his Heisman back.
He went to my alma mater, University of Southern California. We love you, Reggie. I met Reggie in New Orleans once. I told him what a great running back he was. He shook my hand and said, "Thanks a lot, man." And my night was made.
And you haven't washed your hands since?
Absolutely not. But I'm going to wash my hands and my face after you mentioned Adam Shaw tonight. You had to ruin it, didn't you?
You've said his name 4 times since.
I'm just saying. You started it. But anyway, let's get to a question.
Don't blame the messenger.
I have a really important question that maybe you can answer because I haven't been able to answer it when I think about it. So on the positive side, you can say, look, we have 3 great running backs. This could almost be running back by committee where each running back has the potential, to gain 4 or 5 yards per carry, break a long run, as we've seen. And what that means is in the fourth quarter, the running backs are all going to be fresh if we distribute the carries. The negative side to it is that I'm sure each of the running backs wants to get most of the carries. They don't want to share. They don't want to be running back by committee, and they're not going to be happy if each of them is getting 7 or 8 carries a game. So how does Coach Schiano navigate that situation so that he can maximize the success of the running backs without alienating them or, losing, their trust or loyalty to Rutgers football?
Well, I think the only guy who has honestly done enough to deserve being frustrated would be Samuel Brown the fifth, because he's had to play behind Monangai for 3 years here, and he's only gotten 189 attempts in 24 games. So that's about That's about what, 7 or 8? I think 8. It's about 8 or 9. I keep pushing the number up because mathematics was not my degree, but he's the only guy that really deserves to be frustrated with a low snap count, and he's been a trooper so far. But CJ is a redshirt senior. He's going to get snaps. Raymond is 100% going to get snaps. I think they should be fine sharing the backfield for this year, specifically because neither of them is going to ride the bench. It's going to be 2 plays, up, you're in, 2 plays, up, you're in, and they're going to get their highlights. And also, if one of them goes down, unfortunate for the team, but the other guy would get all of a sudden from 50% of the counts to 80%, 85%. And Ja'Shawn Benjamin, I think that he can ride out another year being a bench guy for a good portion of the year, obviously getting his share when either it's a blowout or there's an injury, because he's an important running back. If he gets injured, this running back core diminishes. But in terms of the morale, he's only going to be a junior, and him and Antoine Raymond will share the backfield in 2026. And that's going to be a good year for the running backs too, because they're both good running backs. We have a good offensive line. So if I'm those 3 guys, CJ Campbell, Antoine Raymond, Ja'Shawn Benjamin, your morale has got to be sky high, because either your stock is going to improve this year or you're set up to where it will improve. Samuel Brown, I am so happy that you are being a trooper about your situation, because it has been tough, but you have an NFL running back that you've been back up to for 3 years now. Who knows where Raymond or CJ could be? It could be 4. But he's really the only guy, in my opinion, that if he's frustrated, I understand.
All right. Well, I'll offer a slightly different perspective. Let's get realistic. All right. These running backs are on the sidelines. Each one of them probably thinks they're better than the other. They want playing time. With these young people, we live in an era of instant gratification where perseverance, overcoming adversity, and learning from failure seems like an old wives' tale, even though it shouldn't. But my point is this. What is the chance there's going to be discontent where CJ Campbell's going to say, this is BS. I was the star at FIU. I don't want to come out and have Antoine Raymond get, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 carries. And Raymond saying, I don't want CJ to be getting the majority of the carries. I mean, there is like some internal political dynamic that can affect the cohesiveness of that. So how does Greg Schiano make sure all of those players are satisfied so that Rutgers can maximize its chances of success?
So, again, I don't think it will happen, but if it does happen, Schiano needs to remind these players of what he pitched to them when he brought them here. Because with Raymond, he said, you're going to be stuck behind an NFL running back for 2 years. Benjamin, same thing. CJ Campbell, we bring you in. Now, you're technically Monangai's replacement, but look, you're not Monangai, at least not yet. You have to prove it. And with Raymond and Benjamin, like, these are 2 guys who can be great players on the field this year, and they could have been in years previous. So if you're Campbell, you look at the roster, you look at what Coach Schiano is telling you and other recruits, and that's sort of the pitch that Schiano gives to a guy when he's upset, because there will be some times where running backs are upset. But it's based on the fact that you were brought in here for the system. There's no like Saquon, there's no Monangai, there's no Derrick Henry or something like that when it comes to college. There's no Ezekiel Elliott. I almost said Ezekiel Elephant. But there's no the system's not based on the running back. It's based on running, but it's not based on the running back. So that's sort of what you have to pitch to the guy when they're upset.
All right, so that's a great answer. And so I guess my final question to wrap up the discussion about the running backs, and what I'll say is I think that it's going to be, I tend to agree with you, it's going to be CJ Campbell and Antoine Raymond sharing the carries with slight advantage to CJ Campbell, but I think Ja'Shawn Benjamin will be used situationally and effectively, particularly in third down situations, even fourth and short situations. So my final question for you is this. When you look at the running back performance from last year, obviously Kyle Monangai, shouldered the overwhelming number of carries and did a fantastic job. When you look at the quality of our running game last year, with one running back basically being, the face of the running of our running attack. And you look at this year where we have three capable and serviceable backs. How do you compare the quality of the running back performance from last year to what it can be this year?
Yeah, that's sort of a good question because
Sort of. It is a good question.
all right, man, whatever. With CJ Campbell Jr., who I keep forgetting the junior because you already have the CJ and then you got to throw in the JR. It's like a double lettering up name. But with CJ Campbell Jr., you have to see him progress before you can say that he'll be not even as good as Manungai, but like close enough to where we can say we're at the same level. I have the utmost confidence in our offensive line, but losing Holland Pierce kind of sucks because
Yeah.
he's one of the best offensive linemen that we've had in recent history. But with that being said, I mean, does Raymond getting older by a year, being in the system for another year, and same thing with Benjamin, does that outweigh, and plus with CJ Campbell coming in, does that outweigh losing Manungai? I don't think so, especially because we're going to be passing the ball more this year, even if it's not our main attack. That is going to be happening a lot more this year with the senior Ethan Kaliakmanis bringing in DT, and then, Strong and Duff developing, and Black being a sophomore now. So I don't think the running is going to be as impressive this year, but I think it'll be enough to where we can have still a formidable offense and hopefully be a little more consistent.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And when you talk about running back styles, as they say, styles make fights. Well, these running backs have different styles. Do you think that the styles, complement each other, or do you think they're kind of redundant? In other words, are we getting people who kind of have the same approach to running the football, or are we getting different styles that are complementary that can enhance the variability and unpredictability of our offense?
Yeah, they complement each other 100% when it comes to the top two dogs. Antoine Raymond is a perfect example of a capable power back, and CJ Campbell is a perfect example of a capable hybrid back. I would say receiving back, but you look at his running numbers, 5 yards a carry, 11 touchdowns. That would be disrespectful to him. The only part that's redundant to me is Benjamin and Raymond.
Yeah,
Now, those two, they're very solid, but if CJ goes down, Benjamin's next in line, even though he's not a receiving back.
right.
And Benjamin and Raymond, to me, they seem very similar. And Samuel Brown, I think we don't have a big enough sample size when it comes to a year-by-year basis, so I can't speak on him. But as long as everyone's healthy, I think the complementary pieces are perfect.
Yeah, I think that's great. And so, I guess to end this discussion on the running backs and to end our second segment, if you had to rate the potential of our running game on a scale of 1 to 10 for the 2025 season, where would you rate it?
When it comes to marketing, it's really up there to it's almost like an 8.5 because Antoine Raymond, actually, I think it was Rutgers Rivals, or it was a Rutgers football fan account. They had a poll for who would be on the cover of EA College Football 25 out of Rutgers, and it was a tie between DT Sheffield and Antoine Raymond. So Antoine's got the marketing value. Now, I agree, Jason. I mean, like I said, we're going to be a run-first team. I don't think it'll be a running back, like a solo running back based identity. It'll be, like we've been preaching pretty much all offseason, a committee identity. But when you think about sort of rating this running back core, it can be around an 8, maybe a 7.5. I'll say an 8 because CJ has really good numbers. He might start off a little slow, but that's why him and Raymond are so great and complementary to each other because they run in different ways. So you can't have the same scheme on defense and expect it to work every time.
Yeah, I'm pretty much where you are, 7.5 to 8, maybe a potential of an 8.5. I do think the styles complement each other. But again, Coach Schiano's philosophy, it reminds me of the old school Bill Parcells. You win games by running the football. You win games by punching people in the mouth in the trenches. and being more physical than them. And that's what sets up the play action pass. And that's what's going to help Ethan Kaliakmanis find open receivers. And you say DT Sheffield. I call him TD Sheffield because he is going to be a star for Rutgers this season. So great discussion on the running backs. And Gabe alluded in this discussion to the offensive line. And the offensive line is going to be the focus of our show next week because the running game doesn't work unless the offensive line works. And with some of the losses, some of the additions, we're going to discuss in depth how the offensive line is going to function as a unit and hopefully pave the way for a running game that can set up Kaliakmanis and create a dynamic offense for the Scarlet Knights. So with that, that ends our show and our 2 segments. Unless, Gabe, you have any final thoughts you want to share?
Just viewers at home, you have to be patient with the running back core. You're going to get impatient early on, and I understand it, but I'm just reminding you that we're going to run the ball a lot. And people want to see Ethan explode this year on the field. Not literally, of course, because we need him. But when it comes to his performance, people want to see him try to go for 300, 350 yards every day, 4 touchdowns, whatever it may be. But we have to remember the identity. Like Jason says, RU is going to be a run-first team. And Shiano has always been like that. So be patient at home. But that doesn't mean we're not going to throw the football. We have too many good wide receivers to not throw it. So just remain patient. The offense will find itself. The defense is apparently what we're more strong with. I think it's more 50-50, but just remember that, okay? It's a balanced attack, ultimately.
Yeah, and I think Jason O is right when he says someone's going to probably emerge as the number 1 guy. Remember, no one knew who Mungai was before he started making plays. He was a star at Don Bosco Prep, the arch rival to my alma mater, Bergen Catholic. But he did emerge and had a fantastic career. And I think Shiano's going to take the same approach where it's like, the competition continues into the regular season. And what they do is going to determine how much they play. So, great discussion, Gabe, except for Adam Shaw, which, believe me, I'll buy you a ticket to East Lansing if you want to go there and straighten him out. And his parents. But Adam Shaw, in all honesty, we are really just joking around. We hope
for legal reasons.
We have no, not for legal reasons, because I'm a nice guy.
Oh, okay.
Which you don't seem to recognize.
Well, you know what? Kyle's a Manung guy, so.
Well, we wish you, Adam Shaw, wish you the best of whatever school you go to in your career and life. And thanks, everyone, for being here. If you like this show, please hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back here same time next week, 7 o'clock, to talk about the offensive line and more pick updates from Gabe. So thanks, everyone. Go Scarlet Knights.
Back in the outdoors next week.
Okay.
Having trouble there?
Yeah, it's